Many of us yearn for that community connection, to be able to eat with people, maybe co live with people, co own, or potentially just have your bestie or a community of people around you that support you and love you. However, we're not really sure how to do it. There's a lot of legal barriers to it, as well as unspoken conversations that many of us are terrified of having. Our guest today breaks all that down. She talks about not only the benefits and the values that you can bring to co ownership and co living, but she is an expert in the space. She's located in the Seattle area. So if you're in Seattle, you have a wonderful point of contact, but she also offers free resources for anyone out there who's considering this lifestyle. I think you're going to love today's interview because it's full of creativity and it's not necessarily something you think about when you think about ownership is how can I approach this from a creative standpoint? How can I live the way I want to live and feel connected to my community, my friends, my siblings, or even if you're retiring. So if you've been thinking about living a little bit differently, if you've been thinking about co-living, I definitely think today's podcast is going to be your favorite episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next interview. Today's guest is an opportunity for us to look at not only vegan entrepreneurship, but vegan businesses in a totally different light. I think often when we think of, vegans out there just doing amazing work in the space, where our guest comes from, the real estate side of things is not the thing that maybe pops in your head initially. However, after this interview, it is going to be seared into your brain like it was for me when we first met, because I really find it is a not only great opportunity as far as thinking about how we all live together, support each other together, but also about the idea of investments and the idea that maybe the way we live together, the way, especially even as vegans, we support each other, we might be able to do this in a whole different way. We're going to be talking about a business called CoHome from my guest, Amy McKenna. And we're going to talk about all things like what are all the different options when you are thinking about living with friends, family, or maybe even individuals that you think you would like to buy a property together, and some of the opportunities if you want to go that approach, some of the challenges if you go that approach, and some of the ways that you can overcome it by having an expert like my guest today in your corner if you're going to make that leap. So let me stop and say hello to Amy. Thanks so much for being here with us today.
Hello, thank you for having me.
And let's give everyone a background. I mean, I gave everyone a quick
Okay.
little intro just because, I do my
Mhm.
little thing. But
Yeah.
let's give everyone a little bit of background into first what you do, and then we'll go into the backstory after that of how you got here. But let's talk about
Okay.
what you do day in and day out, and how you're helping people when they're thinking about making that purchase and potentially doing it with someone.
Okay. So, my background, I'm a regular old residential real estate agent in Seattle, in the middle of the city, kind of in an area called Ballard. It's pretty dense. And I particularly love working with first time home buyers, younger people in sort of dense areas. And about 2 years ago, and I work with Windermere Real Estate. So that's my brokerage. I call myself Amy McKenna Homes, but it's under that brokerage. And a couple of years ago, I was asked to give a talk to the non-monogamous community, the polyamorous community, about polyamorous real estate. And I was like, well, what does that mean? And I was like, well, that would be people buying with people they aren't married to, one or more. And so I created a talk along with my lender of what are the things you should consider around financing? What are some options if you want to live, we'll say in community, but have a private space? And the more that I put this together, I was like, wait, this applies to endless amounts of people. It applies to most obviously younger people, maybe who want to join together with friends or siblings for equity. Maybe they'll never get married. Maybe they will or won't. Or maybe they don't even want a real estate relationship with their significant other. There are some people who don't. It applies to especially, let's say, people in midlife who have kids who also don't want to lose their social life, want to have support around them. They don't have grandparents to help out, so they want to live next to their friends. So we also address what would be like to live in proximity, but maybe have your finances separate. That's always an option. So sometimes it's co-living, sometimes it's co-owning, sometimes it's both or one or the other. And then a huge cohort for this are, let's say, seniors, often say just a bit past retirement, maybe divorced widows, who have some equity and they know what their lives are like, and they have buddies, and they're like, well, I don't want to go retirement home. I don't want to be around my kids. I want to be around my friends, and we can look out for each other. So it was just this endless permutation of people. And I was like, oh, there's no one else doing this. Why not? Especially when I would mention it, and people go, oh, that's my dream. Everyone's dream is to buy a plot of land and put tiny homes on it, right? It's everyone. I almost haven't met a single person who doesn't. I know they exist, but in general, it's a huge thing. And there can be an option for that. It may not look exactly like that, but you have to start with, well, who are you? How do you want to live? And then you go to the specifics, like I'll find you the house, or I'll show you how to create the house. Start with how you want to live. And it has really put a fire under me because it addresses things people think about the finance. They think about affordability first, right? And my problem, and while that's very true, that's very, very important, that makes it sound like you're doing it under duress. Like you're getting a roommate because you have to, which most of us know. We had a roommate, not because, oh my God, I really wanted to live with this guy who would leave his dishes in the sink. I just didn't have the money to do it, right? But now you can do it with a little more intentionality. So going into it with someone who kind of has the same priorities, and they may not be a life partner. So that's a bit of a switch in how you think about it, because we think about either owning it by yourself or owning it with a spouse/life partner. So you go in and you know that you may not be in this situation forever, which often happens with people who get married. They just don't talk about it first because, of course, marriages never end. So while the affordability is an important angle, I say in the talk that we give around this, that if you don't like living with people, there's no amount of money that will make it worth it. That you have to go in with the sharing concept in some way, if we're talking about co-living along with co-owning, as part of the benefit. The fact that you can share resources. The fact that, like with one guy said, when a pipe bursts, there's someone else at home to meet the plumber. Or he also said, I haven't paid for a babysitter in 5 years. It's just like a lot of worries just poured off of him. And it doesn't mean that there isn't messiness around just living around people, because people are messy. One of my favorite quotes is, being annoyed is the price you pay for community. But being annoyed occasionally, not the same forever.
I like that one.
Yeah. And what makes me very excited is that I think often when we talk about community, we often think going into the Elks Club or bowling league or church or something like that. And those things are wonderful. They're really important events like that. But I think sometimes we forget about the importance of accidental community, serendipitous, interstitial. Meaning that there's a certain magic I live in a townhome, fairly dense townhome area, and my front yard is just a huge parking strip, like 14 by 34. And I'm constantly out there gardening. And I'm out there and people stop and talk to me for like 12 minutes, sometimes 45 minutes. And it gives me a little jolt. And these aren't necessarily people, probably none of them had ever I like them, but I don't know that we would ever be friends independently. But there's something about that little interaction that really feeds me in these little ways that is different from making a lunch date with your bestie and then having to go across town and, and put on hard pants and all that other stuff. That as much as you want to see your bestie, getting through traffic and all of those hurdles can often discourage interaction. So I think that we forget how important just proximity and accidental interactions are. So I give a talk. Like I said, we talk about lending,
Mhm.
also title considerations, maybe best practices around co-ownership agreements, which you don't have to have. We advise it, just like maybe I'd advise anyone to have a prenuptial agreement before they get married. You don't have to do it, but the discussions are important. And then we'll also kind of give resources to, because we're really interested in the other professionals in this arena, say attorneys or contractors or whatever, who can help people in this. And because as a real estate agent, I'm often the Captain Kirk of the Starship Enterprise.
Mhm.
I'm a specialist in contracts and marketing and whatnot, but there's a lot of other stuff I'm not, but I'm the person you kind of go through to find those, or I'm the gateway
Yeah,
to a lot of those resources. And I
absolutely.
don't even know if that even answered your question. I think it did.
Oh, absolutely. It answered my question
Okay.
and it gave me about 20 more that I
Okay,
want to
good,
dive
good.
into. So I'm all fired up over
Okay,
here. So let me
great.
start with my first one. Let's talk about co-living. I really love
Yeah.
that you use that term because I do think a lot of people would gravitate towards co-living.
Hmm.
But like you
Hmm.
said, they're worried about what we all kind of call the messiness of it. And
Yeah.
it's almost like, how do you start that discussion? Is it even possible? So, one thing I thought was really interesting about what you talked about is
Hmm.
how we can all now reimagine the way we want to co live with people. It's not, it doesn't have to be one way or the other. And the fact that someone can come to you and say, hey, this is what my idea is. And then
Hmm.
you can say, well,
Yeah.
this is how it could work. And this is
Hmm.
how it can function. And this is how we can work out the legalese and, like you said, get connected with the right people. I think
Hmm.
that can take a lot of weight off of people's shoulders
Hmm.
because I think, you have that American dream of like owning a home is one piece of it, but not everyone wants to do it the same way we've always done it. So I guess one question I have with you is, how do you approach that discussion with people? Like if someone's like, hey, I listened to this podcast. I
Yeah.
heard about what you've seen, what
Hmm.
you've talked about. I jumped on your website, but like,
Hmm.
how do I get started? Like, do I just go find a buddy? Do I wait until I'm at the stage where I know I want to, co-live with someone, but I'm not sure what it's like? Or does someone
Hmm.
just reach out to you to say, hey, this is my dream. I haven't figured it all out yet. Help me understand what's
Yeah.
possible, and then I'll go find who I may want to co-live with. What's the right starting point?
Yeah. So it does say, who are the players? Is it just you? You want to live in community, um, and you want people around you? And sometimes you can simply, there are co-housing developments that are already established. Let's
Yeah.
say that you're like, I don't want a DIY. A lot of our talk is for people who want DIY.
Mhm.
Now, there are larger co-housing developments that already exist. And if you're like, well, I just want a unit within that and I want that philosophy and that environment, I can probably send you towards one of them if you want to do the easy way. I mean, like the simpler way is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Um, or I want to start from scratch. Now, do you have other players who are already interested? And I heard very good advice this weekend at the Co-Housing Association conference. A woman said, you don't necessarily have to be best friends to do this together. In fact, I'm not sure that that's the best pairing. And I was like, I think you're right. I think you come in with, obviously simpatico,
Yeah.
but it's as much that you have the right priorities and the right philosophy around how you live might actually be a better partner, possibly. if you are
Oh,
going to say integrate. I was like, well, think about, I mean, think about how many marriages, wonderful romantic relationships were ruined by having to live together.
that's
Like,
true.
is your soulmate actually the person you want to share a bathroom with? Why? And now we live at a time where maybe we can reconsider
Yeah. Mhm.
keeping the good. Like, just because it's always been that way, can you have a life commitment without it? Now,
Yeah.
that works out for me, but it doesn't work out for everyone. So I love that we live at a time, and probably most people who are listening to your podcast also live in a situation where we can sort of just rethink that, because there are fewer social structures hemming us in,
Yes.
or mandating that we do these things.
Yes. Yeah, and that cultural
Yeah,
pressure of, living means this, or this is what success even looks like. I think we've defined
yeah,
it certain ways in the past where now,
yeah,
like you said, having a
yeah,
roommate or that concept of a roommate meant I couldn't do X, right? It was a financial decision. And I think
yeah.
now that you can flip that around and say, maybe the smarter decision is to
Hmm.
co live. Maybe the smarter decision is, even from an investment standpoint, is to co-live, and maybe that is also a sign of success, because now what we're doing is we're almost kind of bringing like-minded people together, and
Hmm.
creating an environment where
Yeah,
living becomes not isolating anymore. Because that's kind of, I think, the
yeah,
challenge right now with our current kind of model, is that you
yeah.
try to own your own space and own your own kind of plot of land, and then you start to feel a little isolated from the world.
And why does it have to be so separate? Let's even say that you do want your finances separate, right? Let's say
Mhm,
that. Let's say I want to live. My best friend and I both have a kid.
mhm,
And we want to live next to each other, but we're not sure that we want to be in touch, or we have different financial situations, whatever. I'm like,
mhm,
okay, well, let's see if we can get you two townhomes together. Let's see if we can do this. Maybe we can get a duplex where your finances would be entwined in a duplex, but there are ways that you still can have very separate but attached, discrete areas. Or I want to have a shared outdoor space. Do you want to
mhm,
build a dadu, a detached accessory dwelling unit?
mhm,
So, to what degree do you want that? Do you want to, maybe you want a common space that it's actually having meals together? Actually, that's tremendously important to building bonds, as we know. Now, it may foment discussions around who hasn't done the dishes, but on the other hand, there is something very nourishing about sharing a kitchen and sharing meal space. So
Absolutely.
start with tell me what your lifestyle is. Tell
Yeah,
me how you think you want to interact. And that's where we go from. We go from your lifestyle, and obviously your finances. What can you do? Right.
yeah, yeah, that makes
And you'll
sense.
talk most likely the lender
Yeah,
about that. Because they're also, one thing we talk about is, let's say that there's one person who has cash but doesn't have a great credit score.
mm,
What's the best strategy around lending? And that doesn't mean that's impossible.
yeah,
You can then separately have an agreement around the ownership, aside from the agreement on the loan, just between the two of you. So that can be an option. It isn't necessarily a barrier. And I feel like sometimes with a lot of these, people feel more daunted than they need to be.
yeah,
So, and that's my goal.
yeah,
Like, if it doesn't work, I'm okay. If it doesn't suit you, that's fine. But I want you to really know that there are possibilities,
yeah,
and just say, hey, this is what I want around lifestyle and who I am and who I want to be around and where I want to be. And these are my resources. What do you think I can do? What are options that I should look for? Because
absolutely.
we're
And I
all,
think,
yeah, we only know what we know. We only know what we've seen, right?
yes,
We all, even the most creative of us, can lack imagination.
absolutely.
So hopefully I can help spur some sort of imagination, or my lender can, or I shouldn't say my lender, she's a lender. I work with a variety of lenders, but Ruby also does the talk with me, and
Mhm.
she's very important to that.
Yeah. And I think that's one thing I was going to say about
Yeah,
listening to you is I'm feeling that creativity. I think when when you think of reaching out to a real estate agent, you don't really approach that with a creative mindset, meaning as the buyer,
yeah,
sometimes you're almost
yeah,
coming into it with a predetermined, I'm buying it for this and this and that.
yeah.
And I think the idea that you bring this is for some of us, this new concept
Mm-hmm,
forward. Now it not only allows us to kind of reimagine how we would co-live, but like you said, how we would potentially
mm-hmm,
co-own and how we want to
mm-hmm.
socialize at different stages of our lives. I think that's something where, we forget that life is long and things change and goals can be a little bit different. So
Mm-hmm.
having these kind of discussions and thinking about this, I think opens up not just where do you want to live now, but what would you want to do in the future? Just like we do like retirement planning of, okay, what would
Yeah,
I do if I, would stop working? What am I going to do? How am I going to plan? What am I going to put away in this account, that account, or however you decide to do that? To me,
yeah.
this also opens up a discussion, and this is kind of where my next question is going,
Mm-hmm,
is around investment or future
mm-hmm.
plans. Do you
Yeah,
work with people, or what would you advise if someone's saying, okay, yeah, now I have a home, I have a place, great, great, great,
yeah.
but I want to invest in a property or I want to have a vacation home, but I want to
Mm-hmm.
have a vacation home where three of us share it. And it's not going to be an Airbnb, it's not going to be all these other things, but the three of us use it as almost like a vacation home together and we rotate between. I mean, just I'm just thinking about all these different ways people can use this kind of thought process and run it through.
And that's a very common scenario, and that isn't obviously exactly co-living if you aren't in the space at the same time. You are sharing resources, but that actually is an excellent way of doing that, and that's gone on for a long time. It's really quite common. Yeah, and I have examples of people who do co-own without
Mhm,
co-living, like even let's say parents who have invested in their child's first home through a tax deferred exchange by selling a rental. So that
mhm,
they move their investment into their child's home and they were able to have certain tax advantages to that, but didn't have to give their kid money.
mhm.
So we try to address all of this,
Right.
and the vacation one is a perfect example. And one thing in our talking about the co-ownership agreement, so famously, a lot of people will inherit, let's say, a lake cabin, right, from their
Mhm.
family, from their
Yeah.
parents, right, and then four siblings have it. Nothing is ever discussed, and all of a sudden, a new roof has to be put on, but one of them isn't saying yes
Mhm,
because we don't have these discussions, right?
mhm, mhm.
So in the co-ownership agreement, it's like, can we just say, how often do we talk about this? And then, again, these are just suggestions, right? Like, why
Mhm.
don't you just, and also so there isn't one person who's doing all this, right?
Yeah.
Who's the leader, who's the boss, who takes all the responsibility and who you can blame when they bring up the bad news, right?
Yeah.
So we agree once a month, we'll talk about this, yada, yada, yada. But you do it beforehand. And I think that's a kind of superpower with this sort of situation, as opposed to, say, families or traditional marriages, where you never talk about this stuff. You don't save up for this stuff.
No.
But you are supposed to have more frank conversations. I'm so totally getting off your question, but I don't care. I love talking about this stuff. So,
No, no, go
and
for
in our in our this is totally off the topic, but one of my clients was an attorney. I showed her the basic co-ownership starter discussion sheet, and she's like, "Oh, I should have filled this out with my husband. Like I
it.
should have done. This is just what two people who own a property should actually talk about." So I think the vacation property is a really great discussion, and it does sort of lead to discussing exit strategy, which is one of the most important things. And we talk about two different types of exit strategy. There's the exit strategy that today we think or hope this is how it's going to go. Like,
Mhm.
we think we'll own it for 10 years, then sell, or we think we'll own it for 10 years, and then maybe one person will exit and we'll buy them out, or something like that, right?
Mhm.
And then there's the what if exit strategy, and you need to have both.
Yeah.
So there needs to be relocation, being disabled. Any of this stuff can happen in a regular marriage. We just
Yeah.
don't plan for it. Okay. And bringing it up, it can feel like, oh gosh, this is a lot to think about. Well, it's just that we aren't bothering to think about it in the
Mhm.
regular ownership. There's no greater risk. Well, there are some protections around legal marriage that do ensure a few things. But the majority of the risks are about the same. Um,
And I
so
also feel
yeah.
like when it comes to risk, sometimes it's more of the fear of things that I think hold people back from putting the right document in place or even sometimes having the conversation. They're just so worried and so nervous that they don't do. It's kind of like, you hear about stories where people, don't want to think about their death, so they don't do a will. You know what I mean? Like it's just the conversation or the idea of it. But when you can kind of put that fear aside, when you realize that there's people like you in the world that you can talk through this discussion with,
Hmm.
and therefore those risks can be mitigated. Those risks can be, in some cases, not even truly risk. They're just risk in our minds. They were just the thing we were really more worried about as opposed to a real risk.
Well, we tend to overweight what we're not familiar with,
Yes.
right?
Hmm.
So when I bring up well, you go to weddings, right? Even though, every 40% of every first marriage ends in divorce. We're like, yeah, I mean, that's a huge sum, but we still go forward with it because we say that the risks and the benefits are mostly worth it, right?
Yes. Hmm.
Um, and actually, one thing we do talk, speaking of wills, um, I do say everyone over 18 should have a power of attorney and a health directive. It isn't very difficult to do that. It's not very expensive. It's really quick. Any of us can get into a ski accident.
Yeah.
Any of us can have some sort of aneurysm, anything. The only thing we know in life is that it will end. That's the only thing we know. So
Hmm.
it's kind of funny that we're a little shy about talking about it.
Yes.
And I encourage people to get an estate plan, but that does feel like a heavy lift.
Yeah.
So if you're not quite there, I met a woman this weekend who had done this like in her 20s, like 40 years ago as a young woman.
Hmm.
And what she and her friend did is they took out life insurance policies, like term life insurance policies. I was like, oh, that's actually really smart.
Hmm.
So for a limited amount of time, the other person was beneficiary, so the mortgage was covered. And they were young, it was term, it was short,
Yeah.
so it wasn't very expensive, but it meant that the other person could breathe easy. So if you
Hmm.
don't want to do the heavy lift of an estate, that might be an option. I thought that was a great idea.
Yeah, I do
Yeah.
think that's a great idea. And I think that's the thing is kind of breaking down some of these, like what people feel is taboo and going into
Yeah.
these kind of conversations a little bit more open-minded, a little bit more creative, and also
Hmm.
thinking that the way we're going to live may be different, it may change. Because I think the idea is that
Hmm.
when you buy a home, especially when I think of kind of like historical thinking, it's like you're going to buy
Hmm.
a home and you're just going to stay in that home until there's got to be a
Yeah.
crazy reason it's going to make you move. I mean, yes,
Yeah.
maybe getting a new job or something like that, but you know what I mean? Like it's a
Yeah.
big reason, as opposed to
Yeah.
you may want to live differently. You may want to live closer to people. You may want to co-live. And all of those
Hmm.
now options are opening up. I think it's really great to have someone like yourself to, reach out to. So I guess that's my next question.
Yeah.
If someone's
Yeah.
saying, hey, I want to co-live, or even
Hmm.
potentially co-own, do they reach out to you for a consult? I mean, because you're based in the Seattle area. So do you coach people? Do they go to your website to get information? Like, what's the best kind of approach if they're listening to this and they're like, oh my goodness,
Okay.
I want to get started?
So I kind of have two entities, and you mentioned we've mentioned both of them. But so as a real estate agent, I'm Amy McKenna Homes. Work with Windermere Real Estate. Google me. I'm at amymckennahomes.com. I have an entity called CoHome, and that website is CoHome Community. Now that isn't a business. It's just where we say, hey, these are our next talks that we're going to give. Here are some links to resources, some really good reading material too. And then if you're like, hey, I just want to brainstorm with you for 15 or 30 minutes, you can schedule with me. You can also schedule with Ruby, my co-home partner, and just chat with us, just to sort of get things moving. There's no cost, of course. I love talking about this. Try to get me to shut up. So go to CoHome Community. And if you go there, it also will lead to our individual websites. And we give a talk at least once a month. We alternate between in-person and online. So if you're out of state, you can dial in. Our next one in November 18th is in person. We will do one online December 9th. I would say 85% of what we talk about is general. Maybe 15 to 20% is Seattle, Washington specific. But
Okay.
also, you can ask me about certain concepts. And also, if you're like, hey, I'm in Colorado, I would like to do this, let me like, I got a gal for you.
Perfect.
So
That was my other
then
question.
you can go to me and either I will know someone or I can reach out and say, hey, this is who I have. This is what their personality is, what they're looking for. And then I can find someone who would be geared towards them. So I can give them some information. And then maybe if they want to pursue something further, because I'm only in Washington State, I can send them to someone who can help them.
Okay. And you cover the whole
Yeah.
state or just Seattle if someone was looking for property?
I do. So I'm licensed in the entire state.
Yeah.
I would say I personally kind of do from like Tacoma to North Bend up to about Everett. But I also have a business partner, wonderful business partner. She lives up north. And so between us, we can almost go to the Canadian border. So we work together. So for example, I had recently had one of my clients, I had worked with her because she was
Mhm.
buying up north. So I kind of do Tacoma up to almost the Canadian border, but I can find you someone outside. I legally could do it outside of Seattle, but I ethically wouldn't do it because I don't know the area as well.
Okay.
I wouldn't want to give you bad advice, but I can find you someone.
That's perfect. And then just kind of maybe my last question on the vegan side of things. I think for a
Yeah,
lot of vegans, this might be really exciting because I think one of the challenges of co-living with someone is the food side. And for many vegans, it's really hard to share a kitchen, with
yeah.
a lot of non-vegans. So I think a lot of vegans may be interested in this
Mhm.
option because, the food and the kitchen sometimes is the hub of the house in many ways.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah.
so I'm curious, maybe just some words of advice for any vegans out there, anyone who's like, oh, my dream would be to live with someone who's vegan. If you have any advice on them on what path they should take, how they should move forward, since I know that's something that would be near and dear to our audience's hearts.
Well, I would say if they specifically want to prioritize living with someone, if they're going to be sharing communal spaces, that is a great way to build your vegan community. I would probably find and put them in touch if they don't already have a group. I would put them together with people. Vegans definitely are very interested in this. And I also philosophically feel like it is better for the world, the climate, nature, if we humans can consolidate and share resources and be closer together and leave nature out for us to visit, but not take over.
Yeah.
So I think it's being kind to the earth, the denser that we can comfortably live. I don't know if that's exactly advice, but I would say the vegan advice is about the same as I would give to anyone else. But obviously, to make that clear as you're moving forward, that this is a priority for me. I want to co live. But first and foremost, I want this to be a priority. I want this to be the environment, sort of like when we give our talks. I tell, my partners, by the way, I can't, I don't present anything that has my name on it that has any animal products in any way. Doesn't mean I won't attend something, whatever, but if my name is on it, I can't even have that there
Yeah.
because I don't want to be associated with it.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's felt a little uncomfortable, but as like, they can go and get creamer in their coffee later. you know?
Absolutely.
uh, so I guess being able to set that tone if you are DIYing
Mhm,
at your own co-living, per se, co-living,
mhm.
can actually be a huge advantage. That is simply, that's the tone. That's what you're starting with. Those are the priorities, first and
Yeah.
foremost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I love the way you're saying that because I think for some people, they think they may have to check that priority at the door. That, oh, maybe, it's too much I'm asking for. Oh, maybe this is going to be too complicated. It kind of goes back to some of those like either fears or things that people are concerned about, or, co-living with someone who isn't your bestie. Like you mentioned earlier, I think sometimes people
Yeah.
think it has to be someone that you're so ingrained with to live with. But the idea is you may not know a lot of vegans, but know that that's a priority. And the fact that I think from what we talked about today, hopefully opened up some people's kind of eyes and minds and hearts to the idea that they can
Yeah.
co-live with someone that maybe they aren't best friends with because that might be the better option, and it's
Yeah.
not necessarily a requirement because of the amazing kind of experience that you bring to the table to help walk someone through that process.
Thank you. Yeah. It's been really fun.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I'm so excited. I have all these different ideas on things that I would want to do and how I would do it, and also how I would have done things differently in my younger years, but can't go back in that time machine. So I will just move forward.
It's just the path of least resistance is those of us. I mean, I assume you weren't born vegan. So doing that transition to something that is slightly uncomfortable and not how you've always seen things. I think there's a lot of overlap. And I hate saying becoming vegan because it makes it sound like I became a different person. I just actually started living in alignment with the values I'd always had. I'll say adopted, putting my veganism actually in practice
Yes.
has made me aware, because I was like, why didn't I do this earlier? Why? Because I just didn't see it, or, people made fun of it. And it made me aware of how uncreative my thinking was in almost everything else in life. Even though I think I'm a rebellious, creative person, I was like, wait, why did I only see it that way? And that's an understandable thing. As social animals, we look to each other to see what the safe way of doing things is. It makes sense.
Yeah.
But it behooves us to maybe think a little deeper and maybe be a little brave. And you might find out how many other people actually were thinking the same thing.
Yeah. I think
Yeah.
that's perfect. I'm so glad we had a chance to chat. I'm really thinking people are going to love this episode because it's just a different way to think about things. And I think it
Yeah.
also just opens up a ton of possibilities for, a
Yeah.
lot of vegans out there, even a lot of our people who listen to this who are vegan business owners. And they have different ways they want to live or be able to live, needing that
Yeah.
option coast to coast, or people who travel. I just see so many possibilities now in this. When, we initially talked, it just blew my mind. But even today, my wheels are turning.
Yeah,
So I just think this,
isn't it funny? It seems so rebellious. I'm like, it's not really that out of the box, really, but feels like it.
yeah, it
It
just feels like
feels
it
like
because
it.
of the way we were, way we
Yeah,
were indoctrinated originally. But then as
yeah,
you start to think about it, it really is liberating. I also think it's really a smart move from a financial standpoint. And I think it also allows people to even tap into maybe a different level of happiness because you aren't kind of have to live a certain way. The idea is that co-living, co-ownership, like all of this creates a community around you that you can live in and retire into. And that I think really gets me excited. Maybe it's just because I'm getting a little bit older, but the idea of, how you could retire with people and it doesn't have to get messy financially. You know what I mean? Like you want to, but the idea that
you,
financially it can still make sense.
you just talk it through beforehand. And remember that we're very alive to the complications or the downsides. People actually lead with fear in this, and they
Yes.
forget the way in which it actually widens their safety net.
Yes, it
It
does.
widens their resources.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, it's very much looking forward to it. And if I can give a shout out to two great resources also for reading.
Absolutely.
Um, Raina Cohen wrote the Other Significant Other, which is
Okay.
a wonderful book about the importance of very embedded friendships, dear,
Hmm.
close friendships. Sometimes that's your life partner, non
Hmm.
romantic partner. And then for general information, of course, you come to me and I'll tell you everything you need to know. But if you're not ready to do that or you want to do some reading on the side, on Substack, there is a Substack called Super Nuclear. It
Okay.
is written by the people who started Live Near Friends and the Radish Compound in Oakland. And it has a lot of really, really great information on specific subjects by different people. It's a
Okay.
great resource. Yeah. So,
Perfect. We'll
like,
definitely link
Other
to those
Significant
again.
Others, inspiring, super nuclears, very practical.
Oh, I love it. We'll definitely link to those in the show notes so that people can check it out. So I just want to say thank you for your time today. I know we went a little bit over than our normal podcast time, but I think it was, I know it was worth it because
Good.
not only is it just good to hear the full kind of picture of what you offer. I think helping many of us like stretch our brain around it, it's helpful to kind of hear the different examples that you presented, and then just the resources that you have provided and the fact that you're a resource for us out there as we're trying to think it through, or if someone is in the Seattle area, that they can
Yeah.
reach out to you and get that one-on-one support, I think is great. So thank you so much for your time today.
Thank you for the platform. I really, really appreciate it. And thanks for being such a great listener and great questions.
Absolutely. And thanks for everyone who watched this podcast or listened to this podcast. We always love it when you tune in. We love it when you support the podcast and, more importantly, support our guests. So if you know someone who's thinking about co living, someone who's thinking about co owning, someone who just has an idea or even a dream, please forward
Or
this
even just wants to buy
podcast.
and sell a house. I can do it to one person
Yeah,
too. You know, I
that's
can
true.
I can help
I'm glad
everyone.
you said that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So please reach out to Amy because I think having someone like her in your corner is just going to make a world of a difference. So thanks everyone for your time. Thanks, Amy, for your time as well.
Thank you, Stephanie. This was a great talk.